Hello and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival, the online festival of ideas that asks the question, what if we could redesign everything? My name's Emily and I'll be your host for this session. Joining me today, we've got two robotics experts. We've got Joan Ortega, co-founder of the recently established startup Mediate Robotics, and Marta Niccolini, head of the Robotic Group at Yanmar R&D Europe. We're also joined by Arup's European Materials Consulting Lead, Guglielmo Carra. And today we're going to be discussing, will robots shape the future of construction? Don't forget this is an interactive session, so please do post all your comments and questions in the box below this session or on Twitter using the hashtag ThinkDiff. This is going to be a great session. We've got a mixture of startups and established companies discussing the future of robotics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Guglielmo. He's going to kick off the conversation with a presentation, and then we're going to run through the different speakers, and then finally come back for a Q&A. So please do post your questions below. Thank you, Guglielmo.
Thank you, Emily, and hi, everybody, which is following us today. Good morning or evening, whenever you are following this presentation. We are in Milan, myself and Joan, and Marta is in Florence. So I'm gonna start by introducing a little bit how construction looks today and what the opportunities are for the future of construction thanks to robotics and automation. And hopefully we're still live. I see some technical issues, anyways. Afterwards, I will pass on to Joan, that is going to talk about the platforms, how platform could help actually integration of robotics in construction, and then finally to Marta, which is going to talk about recent innovation and potential future innovation in construction. So, how the construction looks like today. Here you see an image of Shanghai Pudong. It's a fastly growing industry with huge developments in China, in India, in Africa, in South America. So it's a very live field of the industry, as everybody can experience that. So according to some statistics for 2017, the overall industry globally is going to have a growth of about 3.5%, and the overall market value is about $10 trillion. So despite this very significant growth of the sector, on the other side, what we are facing nowadays, and everybody involved in construction can see that, is that the sector is instead very inefficient. And we have another slide here, which I think is very meaningful regarding that. So, as you can see, while many industry sectors like agriculture, manufacturing are steadily growing after the Second World War, instead, construction is reporting a reduction, a decrease in efficiency, a reduction in value per hour worked. So after the 1947, we have a peak around the 70s and then a drop again in productivity. And as I was saying, everybody of us involved in construction can see that. We know that about 90% of the infrastructural projects, according to latest statistics, are over budget and typically have an increased time to completion. And that's happening to about 50–60% of the building projects. And one aspect, one reason for that is that instead the construction sector, instead of increasing the capital intensity, instead has been decreasing. So actually machines, automation, instead of replacing human labor, has been happening exactly the opposite. So more humans, more workers are populating the construction site instead of machines. And we believe this trend could be reversed. But first of all, let's think about why that is happening. if compared to other sectors like automotive or consumer goods. There are some fundamental points that actually do not allow for certain occasion, for certain situation, to increase the productivity of the construction sector. So differently from automotive and other industrialized sectors, the supply chain in construction is very much fragmented. So we have a number of stakeholders, each of them with a different interest, each of them looking at their own personal business without looking at the overall efficiency of the process. The construction is very low data intensive, meaning that the information developed through the design of a building, of a project, very hardly flow to the production phases and even less to the installation and building operations. More importantly, some differences apply to the fact that the construction industry has many different buildings, most of them looking different from each other. So there is a very high complexity in making standardized components that can be used widespread through the industry. So despite these critical points, despite these critical situations, I believe that robotics and automation can actually provide some solutions to resolve some of this criticism. And I'm going to briefly talk about what kind of improvements can be made at the in-factory operations versus what kind of improvement can be made on-site to make installation and building operation more efficient. So a lot of the opportunities, I believe, sit with the improvement of how the in-factory operation work nowadays, and we know that additive manufacturing, 3D printing could really help that. Here you see an image from a recent project from Arup. And overall, the concept of prefabrication is very key to increase the quality of the components of the systems used in construction, to reduce, for example, the consumption of raw materials, of resources, and also to create components and systems which are more efficient, that works better through the life of a building. I think that a lot of the destiny of components and systems through the life of a building is actually created in factory. In fact, by optimizing the design of components, we can then achieve the result of these components being assembled in a much more efficient way. But at the end of the life cycle of a building, the same components can be taken apart very efficiently by humans or hopefully robots in some occasions, and taken apart and reused, as we saw previously, for example, happening in the car industry. I also believe that by improving, and that's something that we will see later on, by improving in-factory operation, we can get more standardized components that then can be easier installed in on-site operations. We can also allow, for example, tagging some of these components to be then recognizable to the operators on site, so that they know and the machines know where these components can go, need to go. So in-factory has embedded some seeds for on-site operation to work more efficiently. So then coming to on-site, I think the picture is a little bit more complicated. The issue is are higher because the in-factory environment is typically well structured. It is known what's going on, while on-site, most of the operation happen in a totally unstructured environment. So I believe also there are some other barriers for current use of robotics in construction, like regulations for health and safety, the fact that operators are not typically trained to use highly complex machineries. But my personal view that hopefully is shared with Joan and Marta is that there are some opportunities now, like the use of robots and machineries for example, surveying and checking the quality of some buildings and some systems on site, As well, there are already some automated robots that perform demolition operations. I think there's going to be then a new phase of co-tools and co-robots that could help workers to make better operations on site. And we see an image now about by Norwegian company called Evelyn, which is developing robots for repetitive tasks. In this case, we see an overhead operation of drilling. And these robots, I think, are very helpful to make faster, safer, and cheaper operations on site. And I think at the very long term, by educating the supply chain, by using tools like augmented reality, virtual reality, and a more efficient use of BIM models, we can achieve in a range of 15 to 20 years' time, also the use of autonomous robots that do operate in a much more independent manner on the construction site. I think that a lot of these improvements need to pass through the development of platforms that will allow the different stakeholders to really understand the complexity of the construction industry, as well as allow data to flow from one stakeholder to the next, so everybody is on the same line and they can actually implement innovation in actual construction projects. So now I think I will hand over to Jan to talk a little bit about platforms and how they can actually speed up adoption of robotic technologies in the future.
Thank you, Guglielmo. I entirely share your view on how this is going to be a step-by-step step reach of construction by robotics. But I would like to start with our vision, the vision of Mediate, of how is robotics and automation going to influence the world where we live at. So we believe that we will live in a future of interconnected machines that will use robotics and automation in general as the lead factors to improve efficiency, overall sustainability, quality and safety of processes, going from the medical procedures to industry and industries such as the construction industry. The consequence of this would be that humanity will be able to enjoy higher quality of life, because the fundamental part would be guaranteed and safely implemented by automated solutions. So how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there, and how is Mediate planning to contribute to this process? We believe that in order to get there, we need to understand a concept that was introduced by Guglielmo, that is the platform. So nowadays, in order to improve upon current technologies, we cannot focus just on the single technology. We have to focus on how each of the technologies can aid each other in order to perform a better process. At Mediate, we call this the platform. So the platform can be defined as the set of devices or systems that allow a certain process to be executed. In order to implement this platform, we have categorized a little bit what are the fundamental aspects that a robotic platform needs to have in order to perform a process better than it is right now. The three main, let's say, modules that conform a certain platform are the perception, which allows the platform to be aware of the environment, but not only of the environment. The perception can be also understood as the capacity of having access to, for example, internet and all sorts of sensors, so cameras, lasers, all other types of sensors. Then we have the intelligence module that needs to interpret all this information in order for the platform to actuate in a certain manner. And then finally, we have the actuation, that we are talking directly to what comes to most of people's minds when we think about robotics. So the anthropomorphic car, we are talking about the autonomous vehicles, so the mechanics that are going to execute a certain action. But it's fundamental to have these three modules interconnected in order for the platform to perform an overall more efficient and overall safer process. In this Mediate plans to work on these platforms, and this will enable us to target, for example, 3 main pillars of the revolution that we are actuating right now. So some examples of how these platforms could be used are the advanced manufacturing techniques. So those are cooperative and collaborative robotics that using advanced perception systems. So for example, being connected to a master plan that is given by a human, that is shared by all the machines, and locally each of the machines can have information in order to ensure a safe collaboration with humans, is allowing to create new industries that optimize the overall procedure. Another example regarding the potential of the platform is the capability of having both horizontal and vertical information around a process. Horizontal meaning that once the process is being done, all the machines and all the stakeholders contributing to that process have the information available to optimize whatever they are doing in that period of time. But the other very important is the vertical approach of the information. So since the product is created, all this information will be recorded and could be later used to optimize the overall process by having the information on the production, having the information on the consumption, and having finally the information on the recycling part of the cycle. That, as Guglielmo was saying, this is a process that is already done in other manufacturers, such as the automotive factories, that they already know what parts have been inserted in the vehicle and how to disassemble them, and then they can reuse this. This in construction is currently not done, and we believe that with this new approach of the platform, we will be able to reach the benefits of this information. Finally, I wanted to give three very particular examples on construction of how this concept is going to have a big effect on the construction sector, and is the flexibility that these platforms will enable to have by means of implementing intelligence modules that are able to understand the human language better than they are right now. So, for instance, the BIM programs that are used in order to generate the maps, the construction planning, are not currently well understood by the machines. So if we have an intelligence software capable of translating these humanly understandable tasks into the robot side, this will give a direct interaction with the platform. That is something that nowadays is blocking the robot incorporation into the construction site. This will allow for higher flexibility and customization of the products, as we will be able to interact directly with the robots manufacturing them. A second paradigm that is interesting to analyze is considering the whole construction site as a unique platform. So each of the machines in the construction site can be considered as actuation modules. We can have intelligent modules either on each machine or a central one that is connected, for example, to the human that is leading the machines, and then have the perception required in order for those machines to collaborate in a safe manner with the humans. We envision this as being the normal construction process in 15-20 years' time, because nowadays, although we have lots of steps to go forward, we have technologies that will be explained today by Marta that are allowing us to say this is going to happen. We have the capabilities of this happening. And in order to make an analogy with another sector that was a bit reluctant to introducing automation solutions to their processes and that are nowadays seeing the benefits, is the manufacturers, small and medium enterprises that are with the collaborative robotics that are able to perceive the humans. So act safely together with humans and are more flexible in terms of the tasks that they operate, these small companies are seeing that if they invest on robotics, in about a year, they recover the investment and they get up to 3 times more efficiency on the process that they were performing, which is leading to a 60% growth of robotics on those sectors. So we already have some data saying that even sectors that were not using this platform technology nowadays are seeing their benefits. And now I'm going to pass the word to Marta, who is going to explain a little bit in more detail what are those technologies that are going to be incorporated on the platforms in order to make the whole system able to face this new robotic, let's say, revolution.
Thank you, Joan. So I'm going to try to explain you which are the difficulties, but also the opportunities of an introduction of robotics into the construction field. Let's start from the fact that the construction is a quite conservative market, and unfortunately, this is a true fact. There are many reasons for this fact. The first of all, as Guglielmo said, it's the fragmentation of the supply chain. So if we want to change also a little part of a process, we need to consider all the stakeholders that may have a different interest in the same process. Second, there are many problems also for what concerns the practical environment. So if we consider, I have a slide about this, if we consider the industry, we have robots that generally are still and products move on the supply chain. But if we consider the construction field, this is generally quite large, so robots need to move. This is cluttered, so robots need to consider the obstacles, for example, and also the parts that the robots need to manipulate are not well known where the location is a priori. Also, the environment where robots should operate is quite dirty, so there is dust, and this is not so good for high technology equipment, like, for example, sensors or actuators. So this is making robots to be quite costly at the end. Also the task, if we consider the task in a construction field, they cannot be repetitive. So generally the tasks are unique and dedicated for the construction process at hand. So it's quite difficult to program a robot to make a dedicated task. There are components, as I was saying, the components in the construction field are a variety of components with different shapes. In particular, there are components that are made for the human hand. Let's consider, for example, the bricks. So one way is to shape the robot to make the activities that a human will perform, that maybe it's not so effective. And from the other side, there are components that are quite large, that force the robot to be at the same time powerful and precise. So this is a technological difficulty that is existing while developing robots. In any case, in our opinion, there are some global trends that are going to shape this dark side of the construction. First of all, the BIM, that it's a technological infrastructure that makes information digitalized. So those information can be processed and used by a robot. Instead, since some years ago, we were using drawings, paper drawings that a robot cannot use, of course, for its work. Second of all, as also Guglielmo was saying, there are regulations about the safety for the operators, emissions, and also productivity in the construction field. Those are in some way forcing factor for the introduction of new technologies and more efficient procedure in the construction field. Third, there are, in our opinion, the users. So users are nowadays used to more advanced technologies, thanks to the widespread use of phones, tablets, or gaming console. So we think that the new operators, so the operators of the future, will be able to manage advanced technologies and also will be able to accept them in their process. From the research side, there are also many technologies that are enabling the introduction of robots in this difficult field. First of all, as Joan was saying, the IT platform. So we have a mean to share and collect the information to track the resources that can be used by the robot to perform its task. Second, there are some paradigms about safe human-robot interaction. Now the robots can share the same place with the humans. If we think till some years ago, the robots were confined in a cage because they were dangerous for the humans. Now we see in the factory that humans and robots can cooperate together. So the robot can be safe for the human operator. And this is quite important in the construction field. Third, there are more advanced control techniques what concern force control. In a construction environment, the robot needs to interact with the environment. So, for example, picking and placing object cannot be done without a force feedback to the robot. So the robot needs to manage its force in the environment. And the new control algorithms are now available to make it robust and safe to be used also in the construction field. And finally, in our opinion, it's very important the advancement of artificial vision and artificial intelligence. These make the robot to behave correctly in the construction field, so to see where the objects are and where they need to be placed. And also artificial intelligence can in some way enable self-learning of the robot of the task it has to be performed, because also the programming of the robot on the site, as I was saying, tasks are not repetitive, so you cannot program the robot once and then it will perform the work. The robot needs to be adapted to the environment where it is working. So artificial intelligence will enable this. And just to give our point of view and our conclusion, I have summarize the field for which, in our opinion, a robot can find its way also in a near future. First of all, the quality check and inspection. This because there is a quite low interaction of the robot with the environment, so technologies maybe are simple, and also because this information can be integrated with the BIM and the whole IT infrastructure that Joan was saying. That is quite important for the construction field. Second, teleoperated robot or semi-autonomous robot could be employed in the field that are quite dangerous for the humans, for example, nuclear decommissioning. Some prototypes have already been developed and also used in some of the nuclear plants. Third, there are some prototypes at the research level at the moment, but seems to be quite promising for the effectiveness, that are 3D printers. Now there are some research centers trying to investigate the effectiveness of 3D printers in the construction field to build the envelope of the whole construction building. And finally, there are some improvement on mobile manipulators, for example, for the execution of finishing works, such as tiling, painting, and so on, that can use a large part of the technologies that are now available in the market, and then can perform the activities that may be considered in some way repetitive for the construction field. So just to conclude, I strongly believe that robots will sooner or later enter the construction field. There are some possibility that maybe is in a more near future, like inspection and quality check robot, and more advanced robots that will enter in a next future. So if you have any question or...
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, guys, for running us through that. It's really interesting to get your different perspectives on the industry and, talk a little bit about what the future brings, which was great. So we're going to jump into some Q&A now, if that suits you. We've got lots of questions coming in. So perhaps, Guglielmo, if you'd like to facilitate who takes on the questions. So first one is from Laura. She says, great session. Does the adoption of robotics differ between countries? She understands that you're from Italy, but what does the future of construction work look like around the globe, so across different continents?
Yeah, if you guys agree, I can take that one. Yeah, so of course, as Arup, we are a global company, but of course, yes, as you can hear from the accent, two of us come from Italy, one from Spain. So yeah, how robotic adoption will differ between countries. I think there are a number of aspects related to that. And I think the answer, the direct answer is yes, I believe there's going to be a different speed of adoption for robotics in different countries. And the main factors, I believe, are the first point: does it make economic sense? Does it make sense to use robots? And I think at the early stage of adoption, the equation would be if it makes sense with respect to how workers, how labor, traditional labor cost is, and how robotics could allow to save more money and be more efficient in the process. Second point about, of course, this point differs a lot depending on the countries you refer to, because the labor cost has big fluctuation, big differences amongst countries. Then the second point is about regulations. I think to look at adoption at the moment is essential, of course, to understand how the regulatory framework works in the different countries, but more importantly, how fastly the different countries are going to adapt to innovation and develop custom-made, tailor-made regulations for enabling adoption of robotic technologies and automation. Another point, I think, is about the maturity of the market, which is somehow related also to the first point about labor cost. I think the maturity of the market is going to be key for that, particularly how the stakeholders are ready to adapt to this change to happen. And I think a big role is going to be played by contractors in the future that will be very likely in charge of operating the robots on site, operating the machineries on site. So I think they will have a big role to play in the future. And of course, again, the different countries have different players, maybe with different vision, with different strategic plans. I think something that is going to maybe create a common platform is the fact that some building technologies and building typologies are common across the globe. So you will find glass skyscrapers in Shanghai, you will find them in New York, you will find them now in Milan as well. So I think the opportunities of, for example, installing and building certain type of components, well standardized components, might be a commonality across the different countries. So the same typologies of systems can be possibly installed the same way in different countries. Yeah, I hope.
That was a great answer. I think you covered that really nicely, actually. And that's a question we get a lot, sort of how it differs between countries. Obviously, these big global corporations must have to adjust their tactics, specifically within different areas. So that was a really interesting answer. Should we move on to a different question?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Sahar. So he's picked up on the fact that you're obviously from different corporations and businesses, one of you being a massive global company and one of you being a startup, for example. So he wants to know, how do you / your different companies work together?
Yeah, I mean, I have my own view. I can share that, but I don't know if you guys want to start first. Just yeah.
Okay, I can share my view. So we are recently constituted a startup. So we were constituted 4 months ago, and for now, how we are behaving, what we are looking for with big companies is that we are very complementary, because we as a startup, we can take, let's say, more risk in trying new innovative things that come, for example, in my case, from a university, from Escuela Superior Santa Ana, that are on early development levels, but that we are not able to produce at this point. So it's good to create partnerships also with big companies that allow you to guide your research in order to make sure that the work that you are doing on the long midterm will be able to be implemented. But as I said, we are very recently constituted, so that's how we are moving right now. As we grow, we will probably get more an approach as big companies are having right now.
Yeah, I just share my point of view, and I agree very much with what Joan just said. I think it's great, and I think from my side, from Arup side, I think it's a great opportunity to be here to share the screen with Mediate and Yanmar, because it's showcasing a recently established startup, how they can interact with a global design and consulting firm as Arup, and as well Marta represents a large corporate, and a large corporate as Yanmar. I think that for every transition, for every innovation to come, as Joan said, there is a need of companies capable of taking some higher risks and develop faster innovation with respect to what well-established companies might do. So this kind of freedom, this kind of flexibility of understanding the trends of the market, the opportunities of the market, well fit with the knowledge, for example, and the structure that companies as Arup or Yanmar have. I think is essential to really invest time and sometimes money as well in this kind of interaction, because I think that's how innovation can happen in the next future.
Okay, great. So we've got time for a couple more questions, so I'll crack on with those. So it's quite a big question here, but I know when people bring up the topics of robots and, you know, the future of work, it is a big topic, so expect some big questions. So do you think robots will become more human in the future?
I can answer this question if you agree.
Yeah, sure.
So in our pitch presentation, we say something like we want to humanize the robots. Because when I was talking about the platform, at the end, if you go back to the essential, what we are saying is we want to add perception, so the capacity to understand the world, intelligence, so the capacity of understanding this information, and then actuation, which resembles a lot what humans do. However, this does not mean that industrial tasks, for example, will be done in a, let's say, humanized manner in the form of something human. It does mean that humans will receive information from the environment, intelligently process it, and take decisions. Take decisions that right now are deliberated by humans, so will become at the beginning semi-autonomous, so supervised by humans, and then in the long term, most probably autonomous, because it will be, in our opinion, let's say, safer for the robots to perform certain tasks and not have the risk of human mistake. That is something that is less predictable than robots.
Great answer. I think that's something that people are always interested in, and I know we've had this week there's been a lot of sort of age of automation sessions coming up, and it's always a topic that crops up, sort of, are robots going to take over our jobs? Are they going to look like us? So it's just an intriguing topic. So thank you for answering that so succinctly. So we've got a question from Marta here now, actually, from Twitter. Marta, what do you think is the best form of technology for construction? I think these people have seen your slides and understand that you need a bit of a combination, but what sort of formula works best in terms of technology and construction?
So I'm talking about technologies. So first of all, we need to give the robot, as one was saying, the flexibility. So at least a part of the flexibility that the human has. Second of all, we need to work on the mobility system of the robot itself, because as I was saying, the environment is quite large and structured. So for sure, the robot will need to move. Another point that I think is important is the combination of power and precision of the robot itself. And third, the capability of having the flexibility of moving many different parts. So as Joan was talking about his platform, we need to be flexible in terms of and effectors. We need to foresee the robot to manage many components and to deal with many different tasks. And also other 2 points that in my opinion are very important is the safe interaction with the human. And second of all, the capability of visualize the environment and being able to recognize the components and the task to be performed.
Great answer. Great answer. Thank you all. So we're running out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up this session now, but it's been fascinating. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the online audience as well. Thank you for your comments and your questions, and please do keep them coming in. If you're watching on catch up on DIF on demand, you can still post your questions in the box, and our speakers will answer those throughout the coming weeks. So please do get interactive still. So I'd just like to recommend a session that's coming up later today. As I said earlier, we've had loads of age of automation sessions, and we've got a great one today in our live studio. That's maybe the robot invasion is a good thing. And that's going to be a really interesting one about different robotics perspectives. And that's at 5 p.m. in the live studio today. So make sure you tune into that. So thank you all again for joining us, and please do tune in again soon. We've got fantastic sessions all this week at the DIF, and we're nearly at the end now, so please do make sure you tune into more. So that's all from us, and see you next time.